Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of 247 DIY. I've got a pretty massive episode to bring you guys today. I decided to breathe some fresh life into the 2012 Forester here, and I've gone ahead and ripped out every single piece of the gray interior and replaced it with the black interior from a donor Forester. So we have a lot of work to do, so let's go ahead and get to it. All right, so just a quick rundown on the project that we're going to be getting to today. As I said in the intro, we've ripped out every single piece of the light gray interior on this Forester. Personally, I just don't like light gray or light tan interiors on vehicles, but I wanted my Forester to have a 5-speed, and when I was looking for used vehicles, the only option near me that had a 5-speed transmission available was this light gray interior one, and so I've dealt with it up until now. We're just shy of around 200,000 miles on this, so you can imagine that the interior is a bit dingy, a bit beat up, a bit faded, and I just wanted to breathe some new life into it, as well as get that black interior in there that I've always wanted. I managed to find a really good deal local to me. For $250, I got the seats, the steering wheel with the airbag, 90% of all of the plastics and everything that I was going to need. And then there was a few things that at the time I didn't think I was going to do, and then after the fact I decided I did want to go do. So then I went to my local pick and pull and I got all of the plastics for the rear cargo area, as well as the seat belts, because after I gave it a second thought, I figured light gray seat belts with that black interior just wasn't going to look good at all. The donor Forester also had steering wheel controls, so we're going to be installing those and hooking those up to the Android head unit I have in there. And then since the entire interior is ripped out, we've also ripped out the carpet because I had a bit of an accident in the rear, and I'll get to that later. And since the carpet and all the interior has been ripped out, I'm running cabling to hook up an aftermarket Rearview camera, which ended up being a little bit of a trial and error type project, but in the end, we got it all installed, hooked up, and working. And so that's everything we're getting to in today's project. So let's go ahead, jump in, and start getting this interior ripped out. So as good a place as any to start is going ahead, and we're gonna be pulling the front seats out. Those have airbags in them, and then along the way we're going to be removing the steering wheel, which also has an airbag in it. So anytime you're dealing with airbags, it's always just a good idea to go ahead and disconnect your battery. So that's what I've done here. The battery's all disconnected, so we'll go ahead and jump in and get these seats out. And as far as the seats are concerned, I like to start in the back, so I've slid the seat all the way forward. It's going to be the same on both sides. Slid it all the way forward. We're going to remove these two plastic covers here on the seat rails. And then we'll go ahead and remove the two 14mm bolts that bolt the back of the seat rails down. Then I've just gone ahead and slid the seat all the way back. Two more 14mm bolts bolting the front seat rails down. And you can go ahead and tip the seat back. All right, and it was a little too tough to get the camera down in there, but you do have electrical connections for the airbags and the weight sensors in these seats. So you have this yellow plug, kind of a little bit different style plug. You just pull this little black connector backwards, and that'll release the plug. You've got this gray plug, that's a standard style. Just push the little pin down, pull it out, and then there is a black clip here on the harness that actually clips to the bottom of the seat. You can just squeeze the little tabs with a pair of needle nose, and then it'll pop out of the seat, and we'll simply pop that into the new seat when the new seats go in. And we'll go ahead and repeat the same thing for the driver's seat. Since we're right here dealing with seats, you might as well go ahead and get the rear seats out. The seat bottom is super simple on these lower trim level Foresters. They simply just pop right out. I noticed at the pick and pull, if you have the higher spec ones, it looks like with the leather seats, there's a cup holder right here in the center, and then there'll be a little rubber flap that you got to pull up, and there'll be 4 10mm bolts down in there, in addition to the snaps that you'll have to remove. But with this being a base model, all we got to do is just give it a hard yank. It'll pop right up and come out. All right, and then we're gonna move on. We gotta remove these side bolsters on both sides. The top is real simple. You're just gonna get your fingers back here. It's just a pop clip style like the seat bottom. It'll pop out. But first, there's just a 10mm bolt or a nut right here that you have to remove. Once that's removed, you can pull the top out and then pop the side bolsters right out. Then for the seat backs, a little trickier, but not the end of the world. You have 3 brackets. We're using 12 millimeter bolts now. You can see one right there. You've got one in the center right over there, and then one over there on the far side. But there is back bolts on those as well. So if you fold your seat down, these little flaps will come up. And I don't know if you can just barely see it down in there, the head of that bolt. It doesn't look like you can get to it, but the back of these seats is squishy enough with an extension you can get down in there, undo those brackets, and your seat backs will come right out. And then once you have everything loose, those seat backs aren't actually attached to these brackets, so the brackets will just come right out of there. So next I'm going to go ahead and remove the steering wheel. It's not too much of a nightmare to try to get out of there. On the back side you can see there are these 2 holes in there, and up inside there is a Torx screw. I have a Torx bit here. Don't ask me what size it is, it's just the one that ended up fitting up in there. But yeah, there's one on either side. You're going to undo those, and that'll get your airbag to release. And then on the back side of the airbag, as far as getting these connectors out, you can see there's these little yellow tabs. You're going to get under that with a very small flathead screwdriver or a pick tool, and they're just going to pull up towards you. That'll release it, and you can pull both these connectors off. And then right down here, this gray wire comes right down here to your ground connection. You're just going to get a pair of needle nose pliers because it can be a little stuck, and you're just going to pull that off, and your airbag will come out of it. And then as far as physically removing the steering wheel, there's just one 17 millimeter nut that holds it on. I'm going to loosen it up, bring it up off there, but leave it threaded on, and then we'll break the steering wheel free by wiggling it back and forth. Leaving the nut on there just means you're not going to yank that steering wheel and hit yourself in the face. Then we can take the nut all the way off and remove the steering wheel. And one last thing that we need to do before we can pull the steering wheel off, you'll see this little white connector here. It's for your steering wheel controls. We need to go ahead and unplug that, and then we can go ahead and remove the whole steering wheel. And just remember, before you go ahead and remove that nut, make sure your steering wheel is perfectly centered. That way you know when you put the new one on, going on perfectly centered will be perfectly centered with your wheels. Also underneath there is going to be what's called your clock spring. That's what rotates with your steering wheel. You just want to make sure that you don't move that to any sort of extreme. Some people will place a piece of tape over that so they don't accidentally rotate that really far, like I said, to the extreme one way or the other. So just one thing to note with that, just try to keep it sitting there and straight. Then we can go ahead and remove the steering column plastics. As far as I can see right now, there's just one Phillips head screw on the bottom that holds these 2 pieces on there. Off the top of my head, I remember it being more difficult than that when I got my replacements out of the donor vehicle, so we'll start by removing that one and see what else is under there. I don't remember exactly how I did this at the junkyard. I know I didn't remove anything more than this off the steering wheel, but these 2 long pieces here that come down, they're just getting in the way, and I'm almost wondering if I removed the dash cluster, because that's sort of the only, if I didn't remove anything else off the steering wheel, that seems to really be the only way else that I would have the room to get that out of there. So maybe I'll hold off on that for now, since we do have to take a lot more of the dash apart anyway. Let's work on getting this lower cowling piece off of here. Yeah, so that's what I did. You just got to pop that surround for your gauge cluster out of there, and then this top piece will come out. It's just these long little plastic tabs that stick down that accept the screws from the bottom. they get in the way. But with that surround out of there, it comes right out. And since we're right here, we'll go ahead and we'll pull this piece of trim out. We've got some upgrades going in, and this is one of those things. So we'll go ahead and pop this out since we're right here. Then we're going to go ahead and remove these plastics along the bottom and middle. I've already done it here on the driver's side just because it's exactly the same on this side. So we'll go ahead and move on to the glove box. The glove box itself is real simple. You're just going to lower it down, and then there's a couple of tabs that you just press in on. You're going to undo the little hydraulic cylinder that keeps it from slamming down, and then once you lower it all the way down, there's a couple of clips in the back. Those will undo themselves and it'll come right out. And then in order to get this main larger portion out here, we have to remove the console first, but there is this small kick panel down here with just a couple of push clips. We'll get that out of there. So we're going to go ahead and remove this rear portion of the console first. We need to go ahead and just pull up the trim around the e-brake handle. We're going to flip up the armrest, get all the crap out of there, and go from there. And then there's just a Phillips head screw right up here just underneath that trim that we pulled up on the e-brake. And then down inside there's two more. You can either undo them with a 10mm socket, or if they're not too tight, you can undo them with a Phillips head screwdriver as well. Once you have that part of the console loose, there's two electrical connections underneath there. They can be a little bit of a pain to get to, just the angle that they're at, but you can get to them, undo them. I had one extra connection for the base control knob for my underseat subwoofer, which we'll have to remove later. But now we can go ahead, we can get our e-brake handle off. That's simply a press fit. You're just gonna grab it and wiggle it back and forth and pull it off. And then we'll get our upper shifter trim out of here. And then there's a left and a right trim piece here. I believe it's 2 or 3 Phillips head screws that hold both of those on either side of where that top piece went on. So then that leaves this large plastic portion here. There's really nothing too complicated about it. You just got to locate all the screws. There are quite a few of them. Phillips heads, you get those out of there and that whole piece will come out. All right, so now that I'm looking at it, I do think this silver trim piece here, that needs to come out first. There's a screw over here, there's a screw over here, and then in typical car building fashion where they don't really build cars to easily come apart, all of your HVAC controls are Phillips head screwed to the back. So that's not too fun to get to. You're going to see me struggle with that for a little bit. And then there are 2 cables that are for your control knobs. You have to undo those. I don't like undoing them because I always feel like they're never going to quite go back right. But you're never going to get that all the way out of there far enough to get to those screws without undoing those cables for your vent actuators. We'll also have to pull the head unit out of there in order to get this done.
All right, so the next couple of things we have to do, I'm going to remove this stay here. It's a little bracket that holds your floor mat, keeps it from sliding forward. That's going to help us get the new carpet in, so we're going to remove that. It's just a 10mm bolt. And then I need to remove this aftermarket under seat subwoofer that I installed. And if you're wondering, this is why I'm replacing the carpet. Seems like every single Forester comes with black carpet anyway, but when I actually got the 2-post lift from my shop a few years ago, it was a secondhand lift that had to be uninstalled and then transported. Obviously the uprights and stuff went on a trailer, but then all the extra little bits, the arms, went in the Forester, and I forgot to bring a container to pour all the hydraulic fluid in. So I just set the hydraulic reservoir behind my driver's seat, and I said in my head, it'll sit there perfectly fine. I just need to remember to reach back and make sure it doesn't tip over when I go around a turn. And when we left the garage where it was at, I was on such a long straight for such a long time that I didn't think about it. I hit that first curve, tipped over. If you know anything about hydraulic fluid, it just stinks. It gets everywhere. I tried detergents and I tried to clean it out of here. It just reeked and it didn't want to come out of the carpet. So you can see I cut this whole big section out. But we have a whole brand new carpet to go in here. So now I can go ahead, we'll clean our tools up, and I can work on getting this carpet out of here. The only two things that you really need to do is up underneath the driver's footwell compartment, you need to remove your dead pedal, and then there's a little plastic retainer over there. There may be another retainer on the other side. I can't remember off the top of my head standing over here. I can't see it, but real simple stuff. We'll get the old carpet out of there, and we'll be ready to move forward. All right, so I went ahead and removed the driver's side seat belt just to try to remember how they come apart. Basically, all you're going to do is on your slider, you're going to pull out on this and lift up, and then that'll snap right off of there. Sorry, out of frame there when I pulled it off. I still haven't worked out how to get them back on. Just trying to muscle them back on there doesn't really seem to work. But obviously there's a way that that assembly goes back on there. So we'll figure that out. Then you have a 14mm bolt right there. And you've got a 14mm bolt down here. The passenger side has an addition of this little plug over here that you need to undo. And then as far as your seatbelt spool, whatever you want to call it here, another 14mm bolt down here, a 10mm bolt right up here, and then the same sort of plug that was on our airbags, the little yellow connector that you pull out, and pull that off of there, and we'll get those seatbelts out. All right, and even though we are going to go ahead and we're going to continue with the black trim here in the back, and there is quite a bit of removal for that, I do kind of want to go ahead and at least get a lot of those dash components that we removed reinstalled. Only if this goes into day 2, I want all of those connectors, those electrical connectors I removed, fresh in my head. So I think we'll just go in reverse order of operations till we get to that point. So we'll start by installing the black seat belts. We'll get the new carpet in. I've got a little bit of wiring to clean up and some new stuff to run, which I'll explain in a minute. And then that'll get us up to at least getting those dash components with all those connections and electrical connectors reinstalled. And then I can worry about not having to keep that in my mind on where all those connections go, and we can work into the back here. All right, and one thing that I decided to go ahead and at least play around with, is this head unit that I upgraded to is capable of running a backup camera with it. My base model Forester did not come with a backup camera, so I ordered a real cheap one off Amazon. I don't feel like messing with it right now. I may mess with it after everything's done at the end of the episode, or I might just make a separate video. I'm not sure. But for right now, since the carpet's out, I figured I'll just run the bulk of the wiring harness from the front to the rear. Now's the time to do it if I was going to do it, since the interior is all pulled apart anyway. So right up here coming out of the dash, I just have the front connection point. Still not 100% sure how this needs to get hooked up. Obviously this goes to one of the RCA jacks. I don't know where to get power from. I think it was labeled on the harness, but I'll have to figure that out. I cleaned up some of my additional wiring down through here for the powered subwoofer, and then I just ran that cable along here. And for now I just have the other length of it sitting right here, and when we get the rear end toward apart, mainly these plastics over in here, because we're going to have to route up into the hatch. We'll worry about that then. But as far as this kit's concerned, like I said, it was a real cheap one on Amazon. Still don't know how it's going to work out. It had mixed reviews, but it is Forester specific, so it's going to replace one of the license plate lights with this little camera unit here that has two plug-ins there on the end of it, and one end is that harness that we already ran, and then just a power cable that runs to it. I'm assuming I need to find a 12-volt switched source to run this to, but like I said, either at the end of this video worry about that, or I may not worry about it for this video and do that in a separate video. So for now, we're going to go ahead and get the new carpet installed. And here we have the donor carpet that's ready to go in. This was in pretty sorry state. Most vehicles that you find at like a pick and pull place, they're not nice vehicles. That's usually the driving factor for people deciding not to repair a vehicle and just get a new one, is usually if they're just real beat up and kind of gross inside. That's a big factor, is why cars will go to a pick and pull place and not just be repaired. So all I did with this, it's not too complicated. You need a pressure washer. I just sprayed it out for quite a while with the pressure washer, no soap yet, just until I saw most of the dirt and everything, the dirty water, stop coming out of it. The pressure washer I have is this one here from Harbor Freight, not too expensive, but it has a little soap reservoir. I added some low foaming upholstery cleaner into there, soaked down all the carpet with the soap, let it sit for just a little bit, and then came back through and pressure washed everything out. Once it was dried, then I just had to come through with a vacuum and just clean up all the little bits of debris, and there was some dog hairs and stuff on there and all that stuff, and just gave it a real good cleaning. It looks really good. Can't wait to put it in. And then I also have the foams. Same thing sort of. If you go to pick and pull yards, people aren't really courteous once they've gone through a vehicle. I could not find any of their Foresters. They had about 6 SH Foresters that weren't slightly wet inside from people leaving the doors and stuff open. So this was real wet. I imagine it would have smelled if I just let it dry out. So I really soaked this thing out, Dawn in water, just kept massaging it until all the soap came out, let it dry, hit it. Actually, I put it in a bag with an ozone generator, and I haven't hit it with my interior cleaner yet. This is what I use right here. It's Chemical Brothers. It's New Car Smell. It is quite potent, so use it sparingly, but we're going to spray this down before we install it in the car. And everything should be as good as new with new carpet and this new rear foam, and then I'm going to recycle the front foams off of the old one that came out of the car. All right, so the new carpet's all in there. Looks great. I did kind of want to do this last just so I don't get it dirty while I'm working, but in theory, everything we're going to be doing we'd have to do anyway, and all the work we have left to do back there is far away from the carpet, so it really shouldn't matter. The only thing I didn't really expect that's taking quite a bit of time off camera here is there are these little plastic pieces that help support the edge of the carpet and keep it in place. They are stapled on there, and those staples pretty much always rust. They were rusty and they fell off of the carpet that came out of this Forester, the donor Forester. Same thing happened. I have some heavy duty staplers, but none that curl the ends over on the bottom. The only one that I have that does that's like your simple, office stapler, which isn't going to be enough to go through that plastic. So I just ended up doing it sort of drift stitch style. Just use some zip ties, drill 2 holes, ran it up from the bottom so you don't see the little nub, even though this is going to be covered with trim. But I just went through, I did all that, and then of course had to shop vac up the interior from all the little drill bits. But that's all in. Now I'm going to need to go ahead. I think I'm going to mount the underseat subwoofer that I had. What I did was I left the hardware in the nut certs that I had installed when I put that in as part of the installation process. So I just have to feel for those nuts. I'll cut a little, or those bolts. I'll cut a little hole in the carpet, push the carpet down, and then I should be able to mount it exactly where it was. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that off camera because it's probably going to be a little fiddly, and I'll be right back with you. All right, so we got that underseat subwoofer all installed. It actually went together a lot more straightforward than I thought. I thought locating those holes, now that there's a bit of a gap through the carpet and the foam, I thought that was going to be a lot more difficult trying to get those bolts to reach, but everything is good. I just need to remember to run that little RCA jack down through for the manual adjustment knob for the subwoofer. Not that I ever really use it. I pretty much always have it on max. But with that installed, it's going to be a little hard to get to that front part right there where it plugs in, but I'm sure I can get to it. Next, we're going to go ahead and at the very least go ahead and get those dash pieces back in that I was explaining, that with all the electronic plugs that we had undone. I don't want to lose sight of those connection points that are in my head right now by sleeping on this project and starting again tomorrow. And then honestly, I actually think just because it's going to be really satisfying to see a lot of this come together, I think I'm going to probably just make the rest of the push of what I want to get done for today, reinstalling everything in the front end here. And then basically tomorrow, all we'll have to do is the rear end and get the door cards replaced, and we'll be all done. So let's go ahead and work on getting these trim pieces back into the dash here. All right, so we're going to start with this piece here that went behind the glove box. This was sort of the last piece that we had pulled out of there. I don't know why I didn't save the bar that came off of this one, so I had to transfer this bar over. I did transfer the light over, even though I did save that off the old one, and I transferred the cigarette lighter over out of that one. I did forget, however, to get the little 12-volt plug, so I'm going to have to either go back to the junkyard and find a black one or jump on eBay or something and get one of those, but we can do that at a later time. Funny enough, I noticed this same style plug, this is your little like cubby light up. There's a light in there that lights your cubby up. There's one of these here above the glove box, but there's no light in it, and it was the same on the one that just came out of the Forester. So I don't know if maybe like a higher trim level has a wiring harness that goes there. I looked up under the dash, I didn't really see anything that would go there, so that's just kind of interesting that there's a provision for a light, but no light there installed on these. All right, so next up is this trim piece that we had took off. And I don't really care for this silver metallic trim that Subaru chose to use on a few parts on the interior. Mine right up here on the top, you can see it was chipped. This was after I brought it in actually for the airbag recall. They must have had to pull this out to get to the airbag, and the silver had chipped off of there, and I just really don't care for the look of it to begin with. So I went ahead and I wrapped this piece as well as the other silver pieces you're going to see going in carbon fiber. A quick note, I've always in the past used 3M Dynoc, which is what I wrapped the control panels in here. You can see it looks a little bit different than that other one. I used up what I had ordered originally for the project, and when I jumped back on Amazon because I wanted to get it pretty quickly, I couldn't find it. I could not find the 3M Dynoc carbon fiber. I don't know if they've discontinued it or what, but what they did have was this 2080 series vinyl in the carbon fiber. I do like the look of this a little bit better. It's not super like trying to be high gloss on this, but there's a bit more glossiness than that other stuff. It does look a little bit natural. The only thing now that I thought might be an issue, because originally I was going to give this glowing reviews. I was going to tell you guys, if you've been using the Dynoc in the past, go ahead and upgrade to this. It goes on so nice. it is a dream to apply. But the only thing that I thought might be an issue, and I noticed it is going to be a little bit, is this is not nearly as sticky as far as the adhesive on the back as the Dynoc is. I had already come out today, and I just wrapped this last night actually, and it was already starting to lift in a few spots. Now it shouldn't be spots that matter because it was sort of where I wrap curled over where these controls go, and now that those controls are mounted in, they're kind of pressing those edges down, so they shouldn't be able to come undone. It was the same sort of with the vent surround. So that's my only thing. If you're going to go to the 2080 series, if you're doing real intricate stuff like this, it's probably going to lift where you've really pressed it down. And I used adhesion promoter, 3M's adhesion promoter 2. All in all, the major portions of this should be fine though. I shouldn't have to worry about any lifting in any obvious spots. I just thought I'd let you guys know that little tidbit of information if you've used this carbon fiber wrap before, and you also can't find the Dynoc. Like I said, this 2080 is amazing stuff. It applies real well. It's just the adhesive on the back is not nearly as strong as the Dynoc. And then I went ahead and I also just transferred over the HVAC controls. These are those cables I was telling you about, and I forgot there actually is an easier way. I used to disconnect them like up in here, and it's really hard to do and it's fiddly. I forgot that it's actually pretty super easy. You just follow these down up underneath the dash, and you just have this little loop here. It's not really physically connected to the actuator that it connects to. You just slide it off, and then these will pull off. They'll either pull out of the bracket, like this blue one pulled out of the metal bracket, or the whole metal bracket will come with it. Everything just simply pushes right back on. It's just a push connect style connection point here. Just be cautious. These little metal clips here are very sharp. Watch your fingers on those. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get this panel installed and keep going from there. All right, and we've also gone ahead and done a little bit of a factory upgrade here on the steering wheel. I did go ahead and wrap these trim pieces here in the same carbon fiber. Now, as I mentioned earlier, my Forester, because it's a 5-speed, it is an absolute base model Forester. It doesn't come with the stereo that had the audio controls. While I was at the junkyard, I did go ahead and pull a wiring harness with both the cruise control controls, which I had on mine, and the stereo controls on this side. It's the same clock spring connector. I believe the wiring should be in the main body harness. That should all be there. And so I should be able to control it through the aftermarket head unit I have in there. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work like that. The main body harness doesn't have that wiring in there, and these just are not able to be used. But usually the way Subaru does stuff is like your sub connectors like this will be different for your different models, but then your larger connectors like your body harnesses, those will all be the same across all models. So you can go ahead and kind of mix and match and plug in different things. Like I said, this is the same exact connector. There's just extra wires here for your stereo controls, and where this plugs into the body harness. If I was a betting man, I'd say that that body harness has all of those wires ready to accept these stereo controls. We'll figure all that out at the end. So for now, we'll go ahead and get this steering wheel all installed. All right, and sorry I didn't get that last bit on camera. I ended up filling the memory card up, and so the camera shut off. But we got the airbag all installed. So I think we're gonna go over and we're gonna work on getting the rest of the glove box pieces in. All right, and then as far as the glove box is concerned, you are gonna have to swap over your lock cylinder barrels. Otherwise, your current key with your Forester is not going to work. It took me quite a while to figure out how to do these. So you're gonna lift the handle up, and the way this is oriented in there is, if you can see that little copper tab that sticks out of there, that faces away from you. So imagine me putting in like that, and you were to look down in there, it faces exactly opposite, sorry, away from you, to the far side of that. And it's really fiddly to do, but basically I have this little flathead screwdriver. I bent it specifically for this purpose. You can go ahead and get in around the little groove on this cylinder and then slide the head there back onto this copper piece, push that little copper piece in, and then it should pop and pull right out. So all we got to do is install it back in this side. Hard to do with one hand, but there we go. Box cylinder replaced, and we can get this installed. All right, and as much as I wanted to go ahead and just get the seats in, it just doesn't make sense to put those in right now before the center console goes in. It's just gonna make putting that center console in a lot more difficult. With the seats out of there, it's way easier to get that in and out. But that leaves me with a project. So the donor vehicle that I got the majority of this stuff out of, as well as the every single Forester, like I said, there's about 5 or 6 in my local pick and pull yard. They were all automatics. So the center opening here for the shifter is different for an automatic, and this also is that silver that I need to wrap. Had they had a manual, I would have just bought that and then had it pre-wrapped and ready to go get installed in the car, but we need to go ahead and reuse this, so that leaves another project for today. It's already kind of late in the evening, so I'm going to go inside. We're going to wrap this, all of this silver, and even though they have this lighter trim here, I think we're going to wrap that as well. And we need to go ahead and obviously get rid of the tan shift boot and shift knob. So I picked up a leather shift boot here. This is specifically for Forester, so it should work great in there. It might look a little off color on camera. It's pretty dusty. It's been sitting out here for a while. And I've also got, and we'll see more of this once it's unwrapped and out of the package, the same Tomei shift knob that I have in the WRX. It's a very inexpensive, very affordable shift knob. I really like the look of it. It's exactly, sort of minimalist the way I like a shift knob. I don't like anything super crazy, that or they tend to just be really expensive. I'd say the only drawback is it's very light. There's no weight added to it at all, but there's pros and cons on whether you should or shouldn't run a weighted shift knob. But either way, just for a daily driver, I really enjoy it in the WRX, so I think I'm going to really enjoy it here in the Forester. So as far as day one is concerned, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here, and I'll see you guys back bright and early tomorrow morning. All right, and we're picking right back up where we left off. Brought this inside last night. We got it all wrapped up in the carbon fiber trim, and we got this leather shift boot. I think I mentioned yesterday I got this on eBay. It actually went on super easy. There's just a plastic ring that you install. Couldn't be happier with it. Like I said, it was listed as an SH Forester fitment, and it was. There was every single little cutout, every little notch to loop over the little retaining hooks. Everything was there. I really didn't have to cut it at all. There was just a couple little spots where there was a little extra material, but an X-Acto knife just clipped those out, and I was able to install it. Went together super easily, so we can go ahead and install this, get the shift knob on, and keep going from there. So now we can go ahead and start removing everything in the rear end. I'm going to start by removing these rear seatbelt connection points that go behind your seat bottom in the back here. Now before we can go ahead and remove these lower trim portions, in order to do that we do have to pull out the upper trim portion here, and it's just a series of screws and bolts. And that's as far as I'm going to go on this side, only because I ended up routing the cabling for that backup camera that I'm going to try out down through there, and then it needs to come up through here through the headliner, and I need that trim out of the way to get to that access point to come up through there and into the hatch. So for that this side, we're just going to leave that out. We'll move on. We'll get this side finished up. All right, so at this point, I kind of wanted to leave that like I had said, and then move on and get the rear seats all installed, and then probably work on the door cards. But I can't realistically bolt that bottom seat belt down because then the seats are going to be in the way, and I can't bolt that down until after I put this piece of trim on. So I think for now, I'm just going to come and work back into here. We're going to get the big hatch panel down. We'll work on getting our wiring up through, and once that's up through, in a way that I like it, then we can finish off this trim and then work into the rest of the interior. All right, so with that back in, I'm going to go ahead and get the two rear center seat belts replaced and then get the seat backs put in. The only thing that kind of crossed my mind while I'm sitting here that I may end up having to take this back apart again, the instructions that came with this rear view camera are probably the worst instructions I've ever gotten with anything. But if this will decide to focus properly here, which I don't think it's gonna, there we go. This red wire, I don't know if this just needs to go 12 volt switched or if it needs to have like the reverse signal switch it basically to turn the camera on, because the reverse light's going to be down there, which means I'll have to run a wire back up through there like we already did. So like I said, I ordered this on Amazon. I think if I remember it, there was a few comments of people explaining how they wired it up. So I'll have to check that out and try to figure that out. But for now, I just want to transition and start getting these interior pieces back in there. All right, so with that done, we can go ahead and start working on these door cards. I'm on the front passenger side right now. We'll start getting the switch panel out and then move on to getting the whole door panel removed. All right, so note to self, don't buy cheap Amazon replacement batteries for extra batteries for your camera. Been having issues with that one, but I had 2 of them, so at least I narrowed it down to the one that's giving me problems. But I got the door panel installed. We still have 3 more to do, so you can see that. We just need to get the switch panel put back in there. And these ones I did do in the 3M die knock. I had enough to do these. I thought about redoing them with the new stuff, which is up here on these portions, but these are so tedious to do. You have to do a bunch of inlays, and honestly the inlays don't even really look that good, and in this case they're starting to lift a little bit. I tried some adhesion promoter the other day and then reheated it with the heat gun. I think they're going to end up peeling up anyway, so if they get real bad, then I may go ahead and order more of this 2080 and try it again, but for now we'll get these in. These are easy enough to get out down the road if I decide I want to rewrap them. Alright guys, a quick little update. I decided just to kind of plug ahead and get working on this camera. I think I figured a few things out, but I'm still kind of at a loss, and the instructions, like I said, are completely useless, but at least I went ahead. I got the camera mounted in the license plate light spot and then just wired that. These are just for the LEDs, so you still have a plate light. Clipped out the factory socket and then just wired that into the existing wiring for that socket. Ran everything up through the grommet and it comes out this end, so we will go ahead, fish this through, get this at least back mounted up and try to go from there. Alright guys, so I went ahead and got the panel installed back on there. There is the reverse camera. Keep in mind, obviously, because this runs off one of the license plate lights, your image is going to be slightly offset, but it's still going to serve its purpose. And then we've run those lines through and they come here. Now I've done a little research and I have figured out what we need to do. So this one here is power for the camera. Now I'm pretty sure in the head unit I have the option to be able to view the camera whenever I want. So this needs to go to, obviously it's not really going to focus here. Here we go. The black obviously needs to go to ground, and then the red will go to a 12 volt switch power so that when the key's on, I'll be able to access the camera. But we still want our reverse trigger wire, which is what this wire is right here. So this wire will need to extend down. So I will have to pull a lot of this paneling back apart and just run a wire down, and we'll have to connect that up to the reverse light. And then as far as the connections for the radio, I believe this brown wire. It just says back on it, but I translated the Chinese or Japanese, whatever language it is that's on there, and I think it said it's backup camera control is what that says, so I'm assuming that's the trigger input. The only other ones on here, there's camera power, so I don't think we're going to be using that because the camera's powered from the rear end, and then camera ground, and we shouldn't need that again because it's going to be grounded in the rear end. The only reason I can't move forward today is for the video input to the radio. It's a male RCA and the provided cable is a male RCA, so I ordered a female to female coupler so we can connect this up, but that means I can't really go ahead and test and try anything today. I think I might go ahead and pull the rear end apart and get that reverse wire hooked up, but yeah, I can't really move forward and test anything out until this is hooked up anyway. So this is probably going to go into a third day, so I'll probably catch you guys tomorrow or the next day in the morning. All right, guys, so a bit of a success here. I ended up figuring some things out. Had to do a little bit of guess and check, but we're there. So I had to go back through my box of stuff, and this little connector here, we needed to plug into the back of the head unit, and then that plugs into the RCA that comes from the aftermarket camera that we've installed. Now, initially, I hooked it up. This plug here is for the factory reverse camera, and there is the reverse camera plug back here. I assume this would still have a reverse signal going to it, but nothing really, it didn't work when I did that. So I went back to the drawing board. I said, well, maybe that's why these manual transmission ones don't have a reverse camera, is the automatic transmissions have a different wiring harness that send a reverse signal to this plug here. It's probably unplugged somewhere else because it has the body harness for the manual transmission. So we connected the red wire up to the brown wire down here, again, just temporarily. I've tested this, I know it works, for our signal for the reverse. And then again, just real temporary because I wanted to make sure this worked before I took all of the trim out back here. I just took a temporary wire, stuck it down inside the reverse light bulb, and attached it to the other end of the red wire coming out there. And then for our camera power, I came over here. I found a wire that was 12 volt switched on this plug inside the hatch. It's this brown and black wire right on the bottom. I vampire clipped right into that, and then I just ran the ground here to a ring terminal. And even though that is a rubber grommet kind of isolating vibrations, it's still touching the bolt, which then touches the metal of the hatch, and is a good ground to the metal here on the hatch. So all I need to do now, we gotta take all this trim back out, find the reverse wire back behind here, run this wire in nice and clean behind there, and we should be all wrapped up. I still haven't figured out on there how to access the camera all the time. Again, that's why I went off a 12 volt switched power instead of just getting power from the reverse signal, but we'll have to play around with that and see what's up with that. All right, guys, so progress update. Reinstalled the tail light. You'll notice for the reverse light bulb, the positive wire that goes to the bulb is a red wire with a blue stripe, and when you follow that to the harness side connector, it changes to a brown wire with a yellow stripe. You can be a little lazy and you don't have to undo too much. You can take all the screws out of that panel and just pull it out of the way. And then down in here, you just take the tape off of this bundle. You find that brown wire with the yellow stripe. I did another vampire clip onto there with our wire that we're going to run up through the hatch. I tested again just to make sure everything is good, and it is. I also noticed right down in here, there's this empty connector here, and I believe that's for the factory reverse camera. You could plug that in, and your reverse camera harness runs up here through these empty clips here. But again, it must be something to do with the manual transmission. Doesn't have that reverse signal built into that harness. So we just went ahead and did it this way. So now we just need to clean some wiring up, and I'll show you that it works. All right, so I've gone ahead, redid the interior here, got that all back together, did a permanent connection on the head unit, got that all installed back in, got my wiring zip tied up, got it all cleaned up along here, and I just added a little piece of stealth stick felt behind these connections so that they don't make noise hitting against the metal of the hatch here. So with that done, we can go and get the last couple pieces of trim back in the back here, and we will be finished. All right, guys, so everything is all cleaned up. The wiring's all cleaned up. The back's all cleaned up. So I'll go ahead and show you how it works. And there we go. We've got our reverse camera installed. Like I said, I need to play around with whether or not I can access this camera while I'm driving, because that was really the only interest I had in it. I don't need a backup camera for reversing the car. I've never really felt that was a necessity. But I do tow a utility trailer sometimes, and if I'm towing stuff that's longer than the 8-foot trailer, I'll lay the gate down, and with the gate laid down, you can't see the trailer at all behind you out the back. And just for that peace of mind, it would be nice to have the camera there so that I can see the trailer, know everything's secured and still tied down and still with me behind me, and just know everything's okay back there. So I have to go ahead and check that out. I kind of had a thought that I could just run a switch from another like 12-volt source, and then run, like I said, run that to a switch and then run the one side of that switch up to that signal behind the radio. But I think that that would sort of like backfill the circuit, if that makes sense, and then I think that would flow power to your reverse light, and then your reverse lights would come on. I know I watched a video on it a while ago. I think it involves, you can do it that way, but it involves a relay and stuff. That way you're not backflowing electricity backwards through that connection that comes from the reverse light signal. So I'll have to play around with that and see if it's an option. I really felt like having the camera itself hooked up to a 12-volt source and that other red wire coming off the RCA cable, as that was simply a trigger, that there'd be a way to go ahead and access it in here. And I haven't gone through every single menu yet. I may still be able to access it. I got to do a little research on that. Worst case scenario, like I said, another day, another rainy day when I've got some time on my hands, you might have to wire up a circuit with a relay and then an external switch just to switch the camera on with sort of a fake reverse signal to trigger it, and then that way it'll be on while driving. All right, and so this is what the rear camera that replaces the license plate looks like with the lights on. You can see you got the two LED lights there. They're not super bright compared to the other side, but as far as New York State inspection is concerned, they just have to work. It would have been kind of cool if this kit had included sort of a matching spot over here with two lights. It obviously doesn't have to have the camera to match, but just so that both lights match. But what can you expect from, I think this was like a $30 kit on Amazon. It works, and it works well enough for the price of what it was, so I'm happy with it. So now we get to go ahead and look at all of the pieces that I forgot to get black parts for off of the donor vehicles. It's mostly small stuff. For example, this trim piece back here, the little push pins that secure it in there are gray, so we'll have to see about getting some new ones of those. Same thing on this kick panel up under the glove box here. I have gray push pins there that I just need to get black ones of. I may do that in a future date. And then we just have these pieces here. These two pieces are for the center console. I don't know if maybe the consoles that I grabbed at the pole place don't have these. This is just a little separator. This is just a little utility tray. I do like this, and this one is actually broken, so I do want to get one of those in black. And this does make things nice, keeping things divided, so one of those in black would be nice. As I mentioned earlier, the little cigarette lighter 12-volt socket, need one of those in black. And then the big piece that I forgot, this is the lower trim that your tailgate shuts on. Your lift gate in the rear closes down on this. I forgot to get one. I remember pulling it off, and I said to myself that I should grab that, but I thought it was black on my Forester. It's not, it's gray. So I'll have to pick up one of those definitely at the pick and pull place, because trying to get a used one of these with shipping would probably be more than it's worth. And the local pick and pull place that I have, to me, is super, super cheap. Their parts are ridiculously cheap. So I'll just run out there. I'll look for all these components that I mentioned in one of those Foresters that they have on the lot, and we can swap all those out. And then there's just the rear cargo tray. This thing is nasty. It needs a vacuum, and then I'll probably, because of the interior now is basically brand new. I did a full shampoo and extraction on the seats. The carpet's all clean. All the panels are all wiped down with protectant and interior cleaner and all that. So everything's looking great. And these two pieces and the main tray for the back are just real nasty. So we're going to go ahead and we'll get those cleaned up. All right, guys. So last night I took in the cargo tray in the back. We got that vacuumed and shampooed in my extractor. You can still see there's a couple of small stains, but it's a huge improvement over how it was. And like I said, this is just going to get dirty again anyway, because I do kind of use the back cargo here like essentially the bed of a truck a lot of times anyway. It gets abused, so it's not going to be nice for long. I did decide that I couldn't take it waiting and just go into the junkyard at a later date, so I picked one of these up. I just got back from the junkyard, that's why it's dirty, so I just got to clean that up. I got most of the connectors that I had showed you yesterday that I forgot about. The only thing was the little hatch ones here. I dropped one of them, and for the life of me, I couldn't find it again. So I have two. I'll just have to find another one. I did manage to get this. It's actually out of like a mid-2000s Outback that happened to be on their lot that had a black interior. As far as the divider goes, it's kind of unfortunate because the last time, well, 2 times ago when I was there about 6 months ago, they had probably about 3 to 4 SH Foresters that had the black interior amongst a few others that had gray and tan interiors. And then I didn't realize that the first Forester I came across last week on the lot, they've changed up their inventory. It's the only one with a black interior. So that's where I got this one from. It was the same one that I got the seat belts and the all the stuff for the plastics for the rear cargo area here. But that one didn't have the little divider. It also didn't have the cigarette lighter. That's why I pulled this one out of an Outback. The pocket, I just went up and I ordered one of these. I can't seem to find any of these. It must be they just sell these as part of the console when people sell them secondhand. So I may wrap that in carbon fiber, although it's not going to be a straightforward piece to wrap with that sort of inlay I'd have to do there. But it's going to kind of stick out like a sore thumb right now. But I'll keep my eye on the internet and see what I can come across. But I'll go ahead and throw those in off camera. And then when I do sort of the final reveal up close, some nice shots of the interior, I'll get this cleaned up. You'll see that. And then the only other thing I'm waiting on, which should be delivered tomorrow, is I did go ahead and splurge a little bit, and I got some WeatherTech floor mats to go in. So I think that's when I'll wrap this video up, is when I get those floor mats in. So that's when I'll see you guys next. So that's going to go ahead and do it for this one, guys. I'm super happy that I went ahead and took care of this project, especially when you consider all said and done. I didn't keep an exact tally on everything, but all said and done, I came in on this project under $400. I got a smoking hot deal on probably 80% of everything that went into this project. And now instead of hopping into an interior every day that was a color that I wasn't a fan of to begin with and has gotten sort of dingy over time, now I've got this black interior, which I absolutely love. Everything is super clean. You know, I will have to pay attention and keep it clean a little bit better. Black interiors tend to look dirtier than the gray interior will. That tends to hide dirt and dust a little bit better than this black interior. So that is one downside. I will have to make sure I keep up on keeping this thing clean a little bit better than I did with the gray interior. I do absolutely love the steering wheel volume controls. I've only programmed in the volume up, the volume down, and the mute controls right now. I've never had the steering wheel control, so I don't know what the mode and the up-down arrows are, but I can pretty much program those to whatever functions it allows me to in the head unit. But it is really nice when you're driving to have a physical button to be able to control the volume, especially when you're trying to keep your eyes on the road. With these Android head units and their touchscreens, it can be a little distracting sometimes to find the button, takes your eyes off the road. So just to have these over here, it actually is a lot nicer than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to kind of be, you know, just something extra I threw in, but I've been using them all the time when I drive the car. And then as far as the backup camera, like I said before, I don't really feel the need for a backup camera when I'm actually backing up. I've never really needed it. But I do want to wire in a switch somewhere here in the front so that while I'm driving, and if I've got the trailer on the back, I can keep an eye on things on the trailer out the back of the vehicle. So that'll be a separate video once I figure out the right way to go ahead and wire that up. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, like I said, overall, I couldn't be happier with this. And now being in this interior and being so satisfied with, you know, how it looks and how it feels and everything like that, it's going to keep me motivated to keep this car on the road for a long time and hopefully bring you guys much more content with it as it starts to get up there in age and we start having to replace more things. So as always, guys, if you like the video, be sure to hit that like button. Feel free to leave a comment below, and if you're not subscribed already, please consider subscribing. Thanks.